Take your mind into the wonderful world of physical, emotional, psychological, and spiritual wellness. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Kennetic Hour. Conversations with you and guests with your host, Kenan Wesley Mason.
I love pushing the boundaries of possibility, and right now I'm going through a process to switch my system to being source-fed. What's that, you may be asking? Well, it's also called breatharian or pranic living, and it means that I sustain myself in other ways rather than physical solid food. I use prana, energy, to sustain myself. Right now, I'm on day 60 of the process, and I wanted to take this opportunity to address some of the questions I've been asked, and one of which was on fasting. Now, fasting is very different from what I'm going through because fasting, you're still dependent on food, so it's not sustainable in the long term. With being source-fed, it means that I am feeding all the time, really, and in a different way of prana energy. So this could be being outside in nature, by the sea, sun gazing. It also means verbally communicating with my body or using breath techniques or various meditation techniques. So as you can see, I'm feeding all the time. A question also that I've been asked is, how do I feel about being around people who are eating? And if I'm honest with you, this hasn't been a problem, because if I ask myself and really think about it, I'm not hungry. I feel full most of the time. In fact, it was my birthday a couple of weeks ago, and I found great pleasure watching my guests enjoy their food. When I was at the movies, another friend ordered sweet potato fries, and I must say, the smell of those sweet potato fries was very, very satisfying. If I do find myself out of habit going to a food cupboard, maybe at a particular time when I maybe in the past would have taken lunch or something to eat, then a question I ask myself is, what am I really hungry for? You know, we eat for so many different reasons. So that's a question I really encourage you to ask yourself next time your hand pops into the cookie jar. So see you on the next update, and post any questions you might have so I can address them on the next update.
All right. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to another edition of the Kennetic Hour. I am your host, Kenan Wesley Mason. Welcome one, welcome all to another edition as we are streaming live on Instagram, streaming live on Facebook, and streaming live on LinkedIn. So welcome to all three platforms. As always, go to my YouTube channels. There's always two. The first one is right here, the Kennetic Hour, and that is KENNETIC. The Kennetic Hour, and my other YouTube channel, which is Kennetic Fit and Wellness Info, for everything health related, mental health, physical health, emotional health, spiritual health, everything in between. And also go to my Rumble channel as well, at the Kennetic Hour. Subscribe, tell everyone you know to subscribe, leave comments, tell everyone you know to leave comments regarding the comments. And I'm always thankful and grateful for everyone tuning in. As I always say, whether it's one person watching or 1,000 people watching, it's okay, because my voice will always permeate. So thank you to everyone tuning in. As I mentioned in the promos, we're going international today. As you see my guest here, and I dressed for the occasion. So my guest, as we're going across the water to Dubai, she's a master of transformation, a catalyst for change, and a guide for those ready to awaken their highest potential. As the founder and creator of the Possibility Hub, Dr. Carol is a passionate advocate for expanding consciousness and unlocking the superhuman abilities inherent within all of us. With a PhD in quantum morphogenetic science, her pioneering research on DNA bioregenesis and source feeding is reshaping our understanding of human potential. She's a master firewalk instructor, NLP master trainer, a 3-time TED Talk speaker, and MSN calls her one of the top 10 women you and I need to know. And she's the author of Reimagine You, Bioregenesis of the DNA Blueprint through Source Feeding. So please, let's welcome to the Kennetic Hour, Dr. Carol Talbot, PhD.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank
Delighted
you.
to be here.
The Kennetic Hour. Thank you so much for taking the time out. With the 12-hour time difference, because it's almost what 10 o'clock, after 10 o'clock at night over
It's
there.
after 10 p.m. Yeah, gone past my bedtime.
Right. So thank you for staying up with us. It's greatly appreciated. I got so much here in front of me as far as notes, and thank you for your book as well. Copy of your book.
Oh, my pleasure.
There's so much that I want to get to. The first thing is, let's start from the beginning. Let's go back into how you got started in this field. What led you to go into this field? What was kind of the kickoff for you, and how you got into what's called quantum morphogenetic science? How did you get started in that?
Okay. Well, I'm very blessed, Kenan, in that I have a love of learning. And more than that, I have a love of coming across unusual information. And there's actually a little bit of a backstory in how I came across quantum morphogenetic physics and science. And maybe we should also explain what it is. One of the ways I like to describe it is, that we've all had that time where we feel we're more than just with this physical form, or maybe we've wondered if we have more abilities. So there's that kind of like always questions in our mind who we are. So one of the things that quantum morphogenetic physics does is, I like to call it the user manual for being human, really, but human and beyond. So it gives us an insight into our true cosmic history. It allows us to remember who we truly are as the eternal human, and also the multidimensional anatomy, the anatomy of our DNA, and also the 15-dimensional time-space matrix in which we reside. So that's just a little tip of the iceberg of some of the things that quantum morphogenetic physics and science goes into. So it really is a huge and vast subject.
Yeah.
But how I came across it is also quite a story, because I told you I love learning, absolutely love learning. And I was traveling back from the US. I've had the pleasure of having many wonderful mentors and masters that I've met and spent time with. And I stopped off in the UK to spend some time with my mum, and she showed me this manual that looked very complicated with, graphics and things. It was about cheilontic science. And she'd been on a course about 25 years earlier, and so for some reason she still kept that manual. Anyway, fast forward a couple of years, I'm back in Dubai, and I see a course. I'd just come back from the US again, and I see a little talk going on. So I go off to this talk, and as soon as I walked into the room and this gentleman was speaking, maybe you've had those times where you get that bing, 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 there's something for me to learn here.
Right.
And there was. And I also had this voice very loudly inside said, you need to mentor with this person. So I went for an appointment the next day to meet with him and speak with him more. And it was there were so many coincidences, as if there are.
Yeah.
But one of the things was that the master I'd just come back from studying with in the States, he used to be her promoter. So he knew who I was talking about and what I was involved in. Anyway, during our conversation, he had to take a call. And when he took that call, he said, "Oh, Carol, just take a look at that manual, see if you find it of interest." The manual he gave me looked almost identical to the one my mother had shown me a few years earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So as soon as I went home, I called my mum. I said, "Show me that manual again." And sure enough, it even had his name on. My mother had attended a program with him 25 years previously.
Right.
And now it's sort of like this was meant to be. The seed was planted with my mother. So I ended up mentoring with this gentleman for quite a few years. And then that led to quantum morphogenetic physics and science, another way of calling chelontic science, really, as it was called originally. And so then my studies led me into, all the programs from bachelor, masters, and then my PhD in quantum morphogenetic science. And then for my PhD, my topic was bioregenesis of the DNA blueprint through source feeding, hence the lead into source feeding. So that's a little segue or a little opening into how I got onto this path and into quantum morphogenetic physics and science. Vast subject, so fascinating. I like to think of it as, we hear of IQ, EQ, spiritual intelligence, but I feel this is multidimensional intelligence. This takes it above and beyond.
It is above and beyond. I thought it was fascinating because I've heard of um, biogenesis, or something, the doctrine of biogenesis, but bioregenesis. How, how do you define bioregenesis? I guess, meaning starting over or doing it again, or coming back to the beginning. How do you define that bioregenesis?
Well, if we look at into the field of wellness, biohacking is very much a buzzword.
Yeah.
To me, and I talk about this in my book, there's biohacking, but bioregenesis takes it even further because we're going right down to the DNA and the blueprint of the DNA and the fact that our DNA is a transmitter and receiver of frequency of consciousness. It's multidimensional. So 90% of the stream of consciousness that should be coming into us is switched off. And, that's why such a large chunk of it is called junk DNA by science. I like to call it intron DNA, meaning potential. But you're quite right on the word presupposes that it was our original design. And now we have the opportunity to reclaim the original design. And so this was also one of the reasons that I called my book Reimagine You, and then the tagline of bioregenesis, because, the reimagine, again, remembering who you are, but imagine has the words I am. It also has the words magi, the magicians that we are. And anytime you use imagine or imaging, I-N-G, it again presupposes or encourages us to look within, because, as you know, there's magic hidden in the language that we use.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and speaking of language, because you're a master at what's called NLP.
Yes, neuro-linguistic programming.
Yes. Now, because people have heard of that and have different understandings of what it truly is. Can you go into that? Explain what is neuro-linguistic programming and how we can use it to our advantage?
Okay. So one of the ways that I like to describe it is, Ken, and if I asked you if you've ever behaved in a way that's inappropriate, and you don't have to tell us about it, but you probably go yes.
Yeah.
Or if you said the wrong thing at the wrong time, like foot in mouth syndrome, we've all done that. Or maybe you've had times when, the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing. So one of the things NLP teaches us is to become aware of our patterns in thinking and behavior, so that as we open up our awareness and become aware of our patterns in thinking and behavior, we can start to do something about it. So NLP is a huge toolbox of tools and techniques. Some people will have just heard of, oh, isn't NLP about eye patterns? Yes, and so much more. And as I say, I like to call it the user manual for your mind. So whereas I describe quantum morphogenetic physics and science as the user manual for being human and beyond, NLP is more the user manual for your mind. It's like you didn't come from the factory with a how do you work? This is how you work, and going deeper into understanding the programs and patterns that we run at the unconscious level, and understanding the reason that it's often so difficult to change, because the now that you're experiencing right now actually registered at the unconscious level half a second ago. So when you have an experience and you respond and react, you're responding and reacting based on the programs and patterns you've got stored at the unconscious level. So
Right.
this is the reason that you sometimes say, oh, but I said I was going to change. And then somebody triggers you and boof, you respond and react based on those programs. So with NLP, once you have that awareness, you have an opportunity, like a computer, to change or tweak or upgrade those programs, because some of those programs may not be helping you now. They may be holding you back. So, if you want to be performing in an optimal way, just like you want your computer to perform in an optimal way, those programs need to be updated, upgraded on a regular basis. And when you have that awareness of how you do what you do, it's not just what you do, it's really an epistemology of how you do what you do, then you can start to make shifts and changes. And the other differentiator about NLP as a user manual for your mind, it's very much a do with process, not a do to. And as you know, I'm sure in the field of wellness, a lot of people are in the what I call victim mentality, fix me.
Right.
And they're just like, heal me, fix me, you do what you do. NLP doesn't work like that. In fact, none of the ologies or therapies that I work with are do to. They're all do with, because if you think about it, if we acknowledge the magnificent creators that we are, creators within creation, if you created doo-doo in your life, so to speak, if you don't like what you see in your outside world, then if you can take responsibility that you've created that, it means that you have the ability to create something better, something different.
Mm-hmm.
And it just means rewiring. So it's, to me, although I've evolved more into what I call quantum morphogenetic physics and science, the user manual for being the eternal pure human that you are, NLP forms a very strong foundation in helping people make very rapid shifts and changes, because, we don't have to wade through history. And if you think again of language, his story or her
Right.
story,
Yeah.
all the clues are there. And so many people are living their life from their history, their trauma, what happened in the past, going from past to present to future. What if you take it from a different perspective and go out into the future, create from the future, from the quantum field, and then come back and bring it into the present and decide who you would need to be in order to create that program, that outcome. And then that also means creating a different his story or her story to support the future that you want to create. So I believe, the old paradigm is past, present, future, but a better paradigm is future, present, past.
Future, present, and past.
Yes, so you create your future, then bring it into the present. Who do you need to be in order to create that future? And then what past will support you, what history, what story, what beliefs, what values, what story is going to support you
Mm-hmm.
in
Mm-hmm.
creating that compelling outcome. And then understanding from the quantum perspective how, our thoughts come into reality. Because again, if you look at so many modalities, if we look at, again, well-being, and if you created a dis-ease in your body, I mispronounced that purposefully. If you
Yeah.
go to allopathic medicine, they treat the physical, but they do not treat the thinking patterns that have allowed for that to happen, or the emotions that have also exacerbated that coming into your physical energy field. And again, this is where with NLP, you get clues in people's language where you'll maybe hear somebody say, "Oh, he's such a pain in the neck." Right?
Right.
Careful if they're saying pain in the butt, because
Yep.
that's where
Yep.
they're feeling their pain. So
Yep.
people do give you clues. And, when we understand the magnificent form that we are, you know, and the neurotransmitters and how neurotransmitters work, it's every cell is eavesdropping on your thoughts from your big toe to your little finger. It's all eavesdropping on your thoughts. So, what thinking patterns have you been putting out into the morphogenetic field, the ethers, to allow for that to come into physical form? And look, Kenan, dis-ease often acts as a wonderful wake-up call for us to think about, what is it that's really going on here? So many times there's gifts in dis-ease.
Yeah. And the body is like a smoke detector.
Isn't it?
It's like an alarm. You get signals through what we call aches or discomfort. These are signals that are telling us that, hey, you need to kind of check this. So you don't create the exacerbated dis-ease in the physical body. um,
Yes, and of course, there's over 40,000 case studies that prove that negative emotions cause dis-ease. And again, in
Absolutely.
this fast-paced world, what do? Something happens, and it's like push it down and you just move on. If somebody makes their transition, again, we just move on or go to work the next day, and we don't we don't give ourselves time to process those emotions and feelings. We're not given time yet. Hey, it's society that labels certain emotions as good, bad, or ugly.
Mhm,
Anger can actually
mhm.
lead to great leadership. Sadness can lead to wonderful opportunity for introspection. They're not necessarily good or bad. They offer different gifts for us to consider.
Right. Versus in here in the States, and it's like this overseas as well. um, if you have a certain behavior pattern, or if you have certain feelings, psychiatry will label you as being having some sort of disorder, which I never use in my field. I never use the word disorder, because that creates a certain that triggers a certain way of thinking in the brain. Once you give that label, now you're triggering a certain chemistry to be responded in your brain. Whether it's when you talk to yourself, which is okay to do, talk to yourself. You're not going to be considered schizophrenic or having uh, borderline personality disorder because you're talking to yourself. So like you just mentioned about how society has put these titles on us, and it has an effect on us physically and energetically as well, because now we start to have these energy blocks that kind of get stuck in our invisible meridian system, and we don't know which way to go, because the the psychiatrist, the first thing that they do is tell us to take this 30-day supply of medication. And then if that doesn't work, then we're going to prescribe another medication. And then if that doesn't work, then we're going to prescribe another medication. So it becomes this repetitive cycle of spiraling more and more and more and more and more and more into this abyss of
And, and
confusion.
isn't and isn't that how we've been conditioned? You know, from the moment we're born, we're given a set of beliefs and a script. So we
Yes.
operate within a very narrow paradigm, and we'd never question these beliefs. And this is the reason that I love pushing the boundaries of what's possible, whether it's through firewalking or source feeding, because society says those are impossible. But again, having run the firewalking experience for decades, people say, why, Carol, do we need more firewalkers? Probably not. But when people do walk across those coals completely unharmed, something they've been taught and told is impossible, it opens the door and begs the question, if I've been taught and told that's impossible, and yet I've done it and I'm fine, what else have I been taught and told that maybe is not true, that needs questioning? So it starts to open the door to new possibilities. And I feel very much like you that this is the time to get people to question what they've been taught and told, that it's not about taking another pill. It's not about taking this or that. It's, taking the time to really look within. The answers are in there.
Mm-hmm. The answers are within all of us, that they've always been there. We come into this space with everything. But in the moment we start getting programs, we tend to forget everything that we did come here with. Like you said, the regenesis of the DNA. But because of programming, we get diverted into a totally different way of perceiving life. And so you go into, I want to bring up something from your book about programming, because you talk about linguistic programming. I'm going to bring up something from your book here. I'm going to pull this up on the screen because I thought this was great. And this is coming, and you can let me know if you see this on the screen here. So right here, how mass programming impacts your health. And right here, you put television works as a very effective drug delivering system. Another effect of watching television is that the higher brain regions, such as the midbrain and the neocortex, are shut down. And most activity shifts to the limbic system, which is the lower brain region. The lower or reptilian, a lot of people have heard of what's called the reptilian brain, stands poised to react to the environment using deeply embedded fight or flight response programs. Moreover, these lower brain regions cannot distinguish reality from fabricated images. So they react to television content as though it were real, releasing appropriate hormones. And again, going back to the programming, when we watch television, because television is a programming device, and especially now with the big giant flat screen televisions now, I mean, we're just getting blasted with frequencies. What effect does that have on not only the brain, but on the entire body?
Well, again, in terms of the brain, and what I say in the book is, certain parts of your brain start to atrophy, so you lose the ability to, think effectively. But again, the other thing you said there was frequency. And a little bit further on in the book, I talk about, if you think about frequency, sound, music, and how music can, get a whole group of people into a frenzy. But music can also be used to calm people down.
Yep.
So it's a way to control the masses.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying, okay, stop watching television completely, because I'm saying be discerning. And I think this is something that's missing with a lot of people when you're blindly watching TV. If you can watch and see some of the subtle messages and some of the actually at times quite good information that's being shown on TV, and I'm thinking of certain series that I've watched that are actually very enlightening when you're watching it from a different level of awareness. There's some very good series that I talk about in the book, and I also recommend. So it's having that awareness of, are you just, being programmed and there's subliminal messages behind TV? And look how efficient that is, because tell me a household really that doesn't have a television.
Right.
So if they're wanting to control the masses, this is a very efficient way to do it. And of course, now we have even more efficiency with our smart devices and things like that literally people have become addicted to, because it's almost like it's this drug release, the dopamine that comes when you think, oh, ping, there's a message, somebody loves me, somebody likes me, or how many likes did I get, how many this did I get? So it becomes another addiction. And there's something rather wonderful that happens when you are able to switch off from technology, but very few people do. I'm very blessed that I've been on, and I do regularly sort of step back, and you think, people will miss me, or what will happen? Nothing. You can survive.
Right.
So really, that section of the book was to wake people up that we are, from the moment we're born, handed, as I said, this script, these beliefs, and kept like water in a glass. We're contained in a very small paradigm that doesn't allow us to question our reality, that dims our light, that again slowly erodes our potential, such that the abilities of, say, the superhumans, the masters, the gurus, they're relegated to science fiction or fantasy novels and movies. And most people don't realize that those were our God-given abilities, and our light's been dimmed. So that stream of consciousness is like having, one of those light bulbs that's on a dimmer switch. And we're only seeing a very small fraction of what we're capable of. And we don't remember who we are because of these distortions in our DNA, further compounded by the toxins in our diet, in our food, in our water. So if you think of DNA like a film strip, and when light hits that film strip, it's projected on a screen.
Yeah.
Well, if you think of the screen as your outer reality, the game, the hologram that we live in, and if your DNA has glitches on it, like the film strip, if there's scratches on the film strip, that's going to be scratches on the screen. If there's glitches in your DNA, and there are, then that again impacts the reality, which manifests as physical issues, mental issues, emotional issues. And so many people now, Kenan, are focusing on, detoxing, fasting, parasite cleansing, which is fantastic. It really is fantastic. However, what I've seen is that there's a missing link, because people are not also mentally detoxing, they're not emotionally detoxing, they're not spiritually detoxing, which means there's a lot of misinformation out there, and they're not able to discern what's going on. So you see a lot of people creating followers, and not a lot of people empowering people to think for themselves. It's not about becoming another follower. You are that master. You're the soul, the oversoul, the avatar, the rishi, the bodhaya, that connection to source. And the more you repair your DNA, more consciousness is able to come online. You're able to remember who you really are, and your full brilliance starts to turn on.
Starts to turn on, yeah, and get
Yeah.
brighter and brighter, like how you can turn a light and make it brighter and brighter and brighter, or you can turn it down and make it go more and more and more dim. The choice is yours. We all have the wherewithal to turn it on or off, or to
Yes.
make it or to make the frequency higher or to make it lower. We all have that power, if you will. Um, you mentioned I'm glad you put the water up. um, the power of water. Dr. Masaru Emoto did a study about how powerful thoughts are and how they can project into the water, and the 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 energy of the thought gets held in the water when you freeze it. I thought that was a fascinating study that he did several years ago. Um, and water is powerful. We'll get to. I do want to get to that, and also you mentioned in your book. You mentioned the movie Lucy, which I've seen several times, and it's actually one of my favorite movies. Um, how powerful? Because in the movie they showed a certain percentage of where the Scarlett Johansson's she played Lucy. um, they showed a percentage of the brain and that was being used before she had this synthetic substance in her body. But as this substance started taking over her bloodstream, the percentage started going up higher and higher and higher and higher and higher. And we've been told that we only use maybe 5 to 10% of our brain capacity throughout our entire lifetime. So, with quantum morphogenic science, um, is it possible that we can raise that percentage and use more of our brain? Like they were showing the dolphin and how they use uh, sound frequencies through the water and how they communicate with each other. How much of the brain are we really capable of using?
Again, that's a valid and interesting question. And I go back to our DNA. Because of the distortions in our DNA, we've become very limited. Like, as I said, that consciousness stream coming in, projecting like the DNA as a film strip onto your reality, and also the mass conditioning and programming in terms of what we've been told and taught is possible. I believe it's more than the brain. And I do believe that we can bring more online, because in the book I talk about, we are more than just our five senses. And as you
Right.
know, we can't really prove anything exists outside of ourselves, because our whole reality is built through our nervous system, through how we perceive it, through our five senses. But there are more senses. And as you bring more of your DNA on stream, you start to activate the higher senses. You become, as I said, you begin to remember our true cosmic history. You begin to remember who you truly are above and beyond. Now, just a little caveat here, because although I'm talking a lot about DNA, and I see a lot of people talking about, 12-strand DNA activation, and do this in this meditation and that. You don't need very much more of your DNA activated, because if all your strands of DNA were activated, you wouldn't be here, because
Right.
just a small part of our consciousness is stationed in this physical form. If you go to the soul level, the oversoul level, the avatar, the rishi, we're not in physical form. We do have an expanded awareness. Can we, from this perspective, are we able to start tapping into some of that bigger picture stuff? Yes. And that's where the brain has to process what's coming in. Again, it starts lighting up. So I still believe that, and you go into entanglement that the brain is an organ. We're not fully utilizing it, but we're beyond the brain.
We're beyond the brain. Yeah. Um, some of your, and you talked about how you do fire walking, and you also mentioned about you going, doing uh, dark room experiences or dark room retreats, or being in total darkness for a finite period of time. What is that experience, and how does it? What is the body's response when you're in the dark for a certain amount of time? How do the senses become heightened during that process?
Okay, well, you actually go through a number of different stages. I went into the dark room because it was also a breatharian retreat, so we weren't going to have any food. We could have water, whereas the other retreat I went into wasn't in the dark, but we also were doing dry fasting, which is no water and no food. But the dark room retreat, you talked about water and Dr. Masaru Emoto putting thoughts into water.
Mm-hmm.
But if you put a glass of water outside in sunlight, we know many people do that to energize your water. But
Yeah.
think also of your body is a vessel and it's 60 to 70% water. So when you're out in light, your own natural living water, the endogenous water in your body, is also being energized and nourished in many different ways. So there's a lot to be said in terms of the breatharian path, source feeding, in terms of being in the light, being outside in nature.
Mm-hmm.
And there are also some things that happen that help you when you're in the dark. So one of the first things that happen when you're in complete darkness, and by the way, there's a tribe in Colombia called the Mamos tribe, and they take some of their children and they leave them in the dark in caves for 9 years, and some of them even longer. They believe themselves to be the custodians of the earth. So it's a way to help some of the children develop additional senses. But going back to my experience, one of the first things that happens when you're in the dark for extended times, and most people know about melatonin. It's melatonin that helps you sleep. It's serotonin that wakes you up. I always think it's Mel that puts you to bed, Sarah that wakes you up is the way
Right.
that I remember it.
Right.
But melatonin is also responsible in the repair of over 100 genes involved in DNA damage. So when you're in the dark, the first thing that gets released is huge amounts of melatonin, which means that you sleep a lot initially and your body goes through a lot of repair because melatonin accelerates and helps the genes involved in DNA repair. The other thing that's interesting about melatonin and being in the dark is melatonin has a very positive impact on one of the hunger hormones. So there's two hunger hormones, leptin and ghrelin. Ghrelin is released in the stomach and is the appetite increaser. It tells you when to eat. But leptin is the appetite suppressant released in the brain. And so melatonin has also been shown to have a positive impact on leptin. So when you're in the dark for extended periods of time, you don't feel hungry. And most people, if they sleep in complete darkness, they don't get up in the middle of the night and think, oh, I have to have a snack. There are some people who do, but the majority of people do not, because that's when you're in the dark. The next stage, just after about 3-4 days in the dark, you get something called pinoline released, which is responsible for lucid dreaming. So more things come up. And as you stay extended periods in the dark, you then get 5-MeO-DMT being released till you get full DMT experiences, like psychedelic experiences.
Yes.
And you talked about, we go back to the movie Lucy, and if you think about her brain was really fired, when you've got DMT being released, your brain, the neurotransmitters are going boom, bing, 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 all over the place. And so if people who've done plant medicine experience have access to different information. And then they think they can only access that information when they're on a plant medicine experience. But you can also access that information when you're in the dark. But as I said, as your DNA comes online, these are part and parcel of your additional senses anyway. And then if you stay maybe 15 days or longer, you'll see ultraviolet or infrared light as well. You'll start to see more energy fields. So being in the dark is a real beautiful introspective experience because, Kenan, it's so dark. If you hold up your hand in front of your face, you know you're doing that, but you can't see it.
Right.
You have no idea if your eyes are open or closed.
Right.
With a lot of the darkroom experiences, they shut people in a room and keep it dark. However, I was in Thailand at Mantak Chia's place, which is a purpose-built dark room. It's has a central meditation hall. All the rooms are built around it, so you never have to. You can go back to your room. You can come into the central area for meditation, but you don't have to go into the light. And it's funny. You navigate your way around, so you know how many steps it is to get to your bathroom, to have a shower. You've placed everything out. How many steps to get into the meditation area, and for someone like me who's always found I get bored very quickly, I like to be active.
Yeah.
Honestly, I loved it. It was almost those times when you have complete permission to go within. And maybe you've read books by Carlos Castaneda and his adventures with the Mexican shaman Don Juan Martes. And he talks about recapitulation. So we go back to energy here. And recapitulation and the Mexican shamans believe that every experience you've been in, every person you've met, they've taken some of your energy and you've taken some of their energy. And of course, the way that we stay healthy and for longevity, our cells need energy.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've been giving your energy away or allowing other people to sort of vampire off you, then as you get older, your energy depletes. Okay? So recapitulation, literally going back through your life and reclaiming your energy from all these experiences you've had, is something that I found myself doing very naturally in the darkroom, that memories would come up and people that I'd met that I hadn't thought of for a long time. So I was able to sort of reclaim that experience rather than, and find peace within it. So it was a beautiful, beautiful time for me. It really was.
Yeah. And from my understanding, like you mentioned before, while you're sleeping, you're giving your body a chance to heal through the releasing of the melatonin, and being in a deep, I guess, delta sleep during certain times of the evening where the hormones are released the most. What's the time bracket? Because I've heard different things, 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. Where the hormones are released the most if you're in that deep sleep. Is there a specific time that we should be in that sleep state to get the most benefit from the healing hormones, like a melatonin or even going into the DMT aspect?
It was just the duration of the time in darkness. So as I said, I was 10 days, 10 nights. And it's been shown that as you stay, like the first 3 days, it's huge amounts of melatonin. Then the next stage is the pinoline on 3 to 5 days. Then the next stage is 5-MeO DMT. So the longer you stay in the dark, different things get released. You go through different experiences. And as I said, maybe the first 3 days, you are sleeping a lot because, we're bombarded, through our five senses. When you take the senses away, the main one away, different things come in, different levels of awareness. So it's a beautiful experience. Now, for some people, it's not such a beautiful experience because many people associate darkness with, dark is bad, light is good. And we see that a lot in the, spiritual community. They talk about, bring in the light and things like that. Yet
Right.
many of the indigenous tribes only do certain ceremonies when the sun goes down.
Right.
So there's many, many gifts in darkness. And I say this as a person who was afraid of the dark all through my childhood. A lot of my adult life, I also slept with a nightlight. And
Right.
it's probably only when I moved into the villa that I live in now, probably about 15, 20 years ago, I never have used a nightlight. And also that experience taught me the warmth, to be enveloped in darkness in a beautiful way was a very beautiful experience rather than for what many people would consider it to be a frightening experience. For me, the dark held a beautiful warmth and such tremendous gifts. I could have stayed another 10, 20 days effortlessly and easily. In fact, when I came out, it was very emotional, very emotional.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure because you were in a specific place for a certain amount of time, and your body and your whole self gets kind of, kind of used to being in this
Yeah,
space.
beautiful gift, beautiful
Yeah.
gift.
And it's in the darkness has its place just like the light, you know. Um, Space is dark. The sun is out right now, but that's temporary because it's still dark. you know, the sun only gives light temporarily, depending on the part of the planet you are. But there's, like you said, there's gifts in the darkness. That's why sleep feels so good.
Oh,
Sleep is
doesn't
great.
it?
Yeah, sleep is great. I mean, and it's great to be in the dark. And it is okay to turn the lights out, turn all the electronics off.
Yeah,
Um,
and so I would encourage people to, get blackout curtains and really sleep in the dark so that your DNA can be repaired when you're in pure darkness.
yeah,
Your body loves it, and the melatonin can get to work and do what it does best.
yes, yeah. And we've heard of, well, many people have heard of DMT. I've heard of it as well. Um, I don't want to go too deep into that aspect of it, but when you come out of the darkness and you do come into the light, and then we're going to go into your points on dry fasting. What are the benefits? Because again, going back to your book, you wrote in something about sun gazing. So after you come out of the dark and we go back into the light, what are the benefits of sun gazing? As we see here, sun gazing is a practice that allows you to absorb pranic energy directly from the sun, enhancing your vitality and well-being. So how important is it for us to also, in conjunction with the darkness, how important is it for us to have sunlight?
Well, if you think about it, when the sun hits the skin, we know that our bodies are able to synthesize that light and create vitamin D and K, responsible for sort of bone health. My question is, if your body is able to create vitamin D and K, what else is it capable of producing?
Right.
Also, from research, there's probably one of the most famous sun gazers was HRM. I think there was a documentary on him on Netflix called Eat the Sun. And so many people who sun gaze also say it suppresses the appetite, but it's a way for you to nourish yourself. But again, what do we do when we're out in sunlight? Most people are putting sunscreen and sunblock on.
Oh
Yet
gosh.
your body has a natural intelligence to know when it's had enough sun. I have very fair skin, yet I live in a very sunny country.
Yeah.
But, I can take a little sun, but your body knows when it's had enough. But again, so many of the things that we do, we wear sunglasses to block the sun. We wear sunblock to block the sun. So when
Right.
our systems, it's surprising, Kenan, how many people here in a country which virtually has 365 days of sunshine, how
Right.
many people are depleted in vitamin D and K?
Mm-hmm.
because we're blocked in terms of being able to absorb it. So with sun gazing, can it be dangerous? Yes. You do it, and HRM has a particular protocol. It's at least in the first 30 minutes when the sun comes up in the morning. After 30 minutes, it's dangerous for your eyes.
Yeah.
And the last 30 minutes before it goes down. But you start with literally 10 seconds or 20 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can build up to HRM built up to about, 30, 40 minutes. But that's not going to happen in the beginning. And you can view it like a meditation as well. So it's another way to, allow your body to do what it does best. To absorb light. And like I say, if you're in light as well, like we energize water by putting it outside in the light, your body is also made up of water and water molecules. So allowing your body to absorb that light. And there are studies that prove that our cells do get energy from that light, because the main thing, as I'm sure you're aware, is we do not directly get energy from the food that we eat. It has to go through a very complicated process to create ATP for the cells, which is the fuel of the cells.
Mm-hmm.
But again, with all the toxins in our food, our poor cells are like squeezing to try and get any energy from the food that we eat. And your cells need energy to repair your DNA and to repair your body. And if that's not happening, then, bye-bye.
Right.
And then if there's toxins and additives in the food and the water supply that we know that there are, and microplastics as well in the water, this is why endogenous water is so great, your own natural living water, so much easier for your body to deal with. Then, the little energy that your cells can get from the food is then spent on dealing with the additives and toxins in the food that you've just eaten. So that's one of the reasons that I sort of cut out the middleman, so to speak,
Yeah.
and decided, is it possible to nourish myself in another way?
Mm-hmm. Right. And and before we go into that, I have these glasses here that I use from time to time. Uh, actually during when the sun is out bright like this here, these are these glasses that you can put on while you're outside, and with the different colors that form the light spectrum. I have green here, and then I have actually all 7 or 8 of the
I
light,
love them. I love them. I've
or
used
what's
them
called
before.
or what's called the chakra system. They stimulate all of your energy vortexes in your body. But having these on just for a minimal amount of time will stimulate different energy spectrums in your body.
I totally agree with you on those coloured glasses. I've used them before. They also highlight, Kenan, that if you wear them for a period of time, then when you take them off, like if you've got the purple ones on,
Yeah,
that everything looks kind of purple. It
that's
shows
right.
you how our world is coloured by what we wear, by what we're told to see. The other thing that comes to mind about those, and you may not have come across these, you're going to love them. I
Yeah.
have a beautiful pair of amethyst glasses. Now, people think they are sunglasses. They're not.
Okay.
They're crystal lenses, but when I wear them, they refresh my eyes.
Yes,
So,
it is refreshing.
I'm going to send you a link to those, because the company I got them for also has emerald and citrine as well. But those colored glasses, you've reminded me how much I used to love them and how valuable they are. Because again, what you're highlighting is, we're seeing energy. And all organisms read energy, but as humans, we've got very lazy. So if you're hearing sound, if you're hearing our voices, you're hearing energy. If you're
Mhm.
seeing colors on what we're wearing, then again, you're seeing energy. So again, wearing those glasses, what a wonderful way to shift your energy and stimulate certain chakras, Love it.
Yes.
I love them.
Yeah. And they do have an effect on the human body. Whether you feel it or not is irrelevant. They do have an effect on the human body, and heightening your entire energy spectrum. You know, when you see the rainbow outside after a rain, that's what we are.
Totally.
That's what we are. You know. So for we're over time, and thank you so much for staying up. I know it's
Oh,
your
no, look, when it's an engaging conversation,
well,
and I love talking about this, you know, your
yeah,
PhD becomes your life's work. And for me to get people to think a little bit differently about what they're really hungry for, you know, and nourishing yourselves in a different way, um,
yes,
you know, it's not everybody's path. And if I can just switch on a light bulb to think about, you know, what you're really hungry for, and are there different ways of nourishing yourself, like beautiful conversations like this, um,
yes.
putting on colored glasses and enjoying the world in a different color. You know, there are so many different ways of nourishing yourself, so many different ways.
So, before I go into the question of dry fasting, I'm going to pull this clip up. It's about 2 minutes, but it's a clip of a previous show that I did, and I'm going to highlight this because it's going to segue into the conversation of why you chose to go the dry fasting route. So I'm just going to play this. I'm going to play this clip here. And let's see. So we're going to take a listen to this here. Two different websites, but it's the same story. But the headline reads: 14-year-old wins U.S. top young scientist for inventing pesticide detector for fruits and vegetables. I mean, I think it's real sad that a 14-year-old has to invent a pesticide detector, because our food is so tainted, our produce food supply is so tainted, full of pesticides and herbicides, that a 14-year-old had to invent a device to detect pesticides. A ninth grader from Shelbyville, Georgia, has won the 3M Young Scientist Challenge after inventing a handheld device designed to detect pesticide residue on produce. Sarish Subhash set himself apart with his AI-based sensor to win the grand prize of $25,000 cash and a prestigious title of America's top young scientist. Young scientist. So how come we're not hearing about this? How come we're not hearing about this? And these are young people in their adolescent years, while we're spraying the fields to high heaven of pesticides and herbicides, right? But we have a 14-year-old ninth grader right here. I'm going to put him up. Look at that. This should be headline news. This should be headline news. All right. So, as we see that clip there, you made a decision to do what's called dry fasting. So, can you explain what dry fasting is and how it relates to what you're doing now with what's called source feeding?
Okay, so when I came out of the darkroom retreat, as I said, it was also a breatharian program. I did go back to eating lightly, and I decided I wanted to also research a different way as well, from being in the dark to also dry fasting. I felt that was something that would flip the switch. So many people have been told that we can't go 3 days without water, else your body will start to shut down. And again, that goes back to the beliefs and script that we're handed about what's possible.
Right.
And you know, if you've come across any of the books by the life and teachings of the masters of the Far East, by Baird T. Spalding. You know, he's a group of 11 scientists in the late 1800s spent time with masters and noticed that they often went years without the need for physical food or water. And my question has always been, if they can do it, why can't I? You know, is it something to do with our DNA, or is it down to programming conditioning? So on this particular experience, we were going to do anywhere from 3 to 5 days of dry fasting, where there's literally no food, no liquid. Now, of course, when you first do this, your body goes through detoxing first. And, you know, I live in a part of the world where once a year they dry fast from sunrise to sunset during Ramadan. We have Ramadan coming up at the end of and most people, when they do this, you know, your mouth goes dry as a bone. So no matter how many times you wash your teeth, rinse your mouth, 20 seconds later, dry as a bone. But what that does actually, and there's such interesting research, Kenan, coming out, particularly from Russia by Dr. Sergei Filanov. He actually takes people on 7-day and 11-day dry fasting retreats, 11 days if they're going through serious physical or life-threatening issues. Because if you think about it, when we're sick, you don't want to eat anything, you don't want to drink anything. It's, you know, friends and family who say, you've got to eat, you've got to drink. But your body knows what to do. It doesn't want anything. So when you dry fast, what happens is your body starts to release its own endogenous water, its own natural living water, and it comes from the fat cells. And let's face it, if we're 60 to 70% water, you're not going to run out of water in 3 to 5 days. You're not.
That's
right. You know, you've got to be peeing a lot to get rid of all that water.
That's right.
And your body wouldn't allow it. So the next thing that also happens is the stem cell crew come in, because it's almost like they're going, emergency, in they come. So you're forcing the body to do what it does best, which is repair itself, and do that very, very quickly. Now, once your body is clean, then you don't feel thirsty because you're releasing your own endogenous water. So when I was at this, doing this experience initially, we were also doing vipassana. In other words, we weren't speaking or anything, which was a good job because your mouth's so dry, you can't speak at all. You just, you know, you're dry as a bone.
Yeah.
But now I dry fast once a week for anywhere between 16 to 24 hours, really as a way to reset my system every week. And I don't find it a hardship. I can go to the gym, I can go to the beach, I can do everything I want to do, and my mouth isn't dry. I still have saliva in my mouth. It's like my body has found its groove with that. Do I want to do it always? No. So in terms of source feeding and the breatharian path, there's different levels. And the reason I say source feeding rather than breatharian is somebody asked me a question that made me laugh, but it actually was quite logical. They said, well, Carol, when you're hungry, if you're a breatharian, do you just sit down and do a breathing technique? And I said, I laughed. I said, no. You know, you're feeding all the time in different ways. And the name suggests that's what you're doing, that you're nourishing yourself through breath work. Well, it's one way.
Yeah.
But, you know, that there's different levels. So a level 4 breatharian or source feeder is the breatharian who doesn't have any water, any liquid, any food. And there's very, very few of those level 4 breatharians in the world. The most famous one would be Prahlad Jani, who had a vision when he was a child and lived most of his life in a cave and went decades and decades without food and water. And also he did put himself, with the help of his brother, through extensive testing with a university hospital in India that proved that what he was doing he was able to sustain himself and he was speaking the truth. The level 3 breatharian, which is most of the 200,000 breatharians in the world and myself, we do drink water And we do have diluted juices, maybe diluted soup, cup of tea here and there, and we will eat. We'll usually eat a proper meal once a week or once every couple of weeks. And you may have, like I live in the Middle East, I love hummus, I love chocolate. So you miss taste and texture. So it's not that you're eating for the nourishment, but you're eating because it's pleasurable at times.
Yeah.
But you know that you're able to nourish your body in other ways and in ways that you don't feel hungry. And as I said in that initial video that you showed, it's different from fasting because fasting is not sustainable. You're still dependent on food, physical food. I'm not dependent on food, and I'll just say it's a huge program and conditioning to break free from. Huge.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so when I came out of that program where I was dry fasting, we had quite a heavy duty 2-month protocol. So for the first 2 weeks, we were allowed water and diluted juices, no chewing anything actually for 2 months. After 2 weeks, we could add in diluted soup and maybe a cup of tea or something like that, but no chewing, no using this muscle, literally switching off the conditioning for 2 months. And I actually kept that up for over 2 months. And that's not something that many people can do because of the social conditioning, the social impact of food. You know, I'm very lucky. I have great friends who I said, still invite me. I may eat or I may have a juice. And they've been great. But for many people on those programs, they went back. It was just a way to detox for a while. And then they went back to eating or maybe being more mindful. So there are different levels to consider because, you know, if I went in all guns blazing and saying, stop eating, people go, are you nuts? I love eating. Do we eat sometimes because it's the time, it's breakfast time, it's lunchtime, or do you eat because it's social? Or we look at the conditioning from childhood that there's certain times of the year where there's more food, it's a celebration, food was given as a reward, it's often withheld as a punishment. There's so many reasons around food to address. And then there's the, you know, are you eating because you're sad, because you're depressed, because you're happy, because you're celebrating? There's so many reasons that the question here has to be, what are you really hungry for? And to me, the reason I did the dry fasting was I felt that for me personally, it would help me flip the switch and really condition my body to kickstart and say, nourish yourself in a different way.
And nourish yourself in a different way. As I pull up this here, and you just said it too. What are you truly? What is your true hunger, or what if the true hunger you feel isn't for food? Because many people don't eat because they're hungry. Many people eat because they're depressed or stressed, or they had something bad happen that day or yesterday, and they stress eat. When they feel sour, they want something sweet, you know. So people do. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is, instead of reaching for food, are there other ways to satisfy that hunger, like the lovely, nourishing conversation we're having? You know, listening to music and thinking, oh, I love this track. Isn't that nourishing? Going to a concert, spending time with good friends, you know, rather than going to a coffee shop, I love to walk and talk or go hiking. I do aerial performing arts. I love it. All those nourish you. So I'm just suggesting that you don't have to follow my path because, you know, to be honest with you, Ken, and this is more of a spiritual initiation. You know, not everybody can hold this frequency. And I've been moving towards this for decades. And I do believe it's a spiritual initiation, that unless you can hold the frequency, you're not going to be able to sort of hold this way. And I'm nearly a year in, so I will still make a decision whether I choose to continue. But I actually don't find it a hardship when I have people round. I'm not just having people around and is just nourishing for me. Looking, as I said in that opening video, watching them enjoying the food, enjoying the conversation. So I'm asking people to literally reimagine nourishment can come from other sources rather than what's on your plate. And of course, the masters, the gurus, the superhumans showed us what's possible. But we can go from surviving to thriving. And if they showed us the way, it's now our time to start, following and knowing that it's possible.
It is possible. And thank you for that explanation. I thought I was doing something when I did 40 days and 40 nights of juice and smoothie fasting. So, but you've taken it to, like you said, a different level, and it's not for everyone. It's not for everyone.
Definitely
for those
not.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say it's definitely not for everybody, and I'm not advocating it necessarily as a path. It's a calling. And look, I was doing my PhD. I needed to do some research, and I couldn't be doing a PhD or writing a book about something that I haven't experienced myself. And it was also motivation was to repair my DNA and start activating the higher senses and to start seeing what would happen if I did. So it's been an interesting experience and an interesting journey. Was it challenging when I came back initially from the dry fasting retreat? Yeah, I was all over the shop in terms of frequencies and things like that.
Yeah.
What I have found, though, is my energy is extraordinary. It really is extraordinary. And going back to, what that research you showed us from that young lad who's shown the toxins in our fruit, in our vegetables, the arsenic and lead in our water supply, which actually is very bad for the development of children. We see a lot of children going through development issues. And even water fasting, people say, oh, I'll do water fasting. Well, your body's still expecting food when you're water fasting, and it still has to deal with the toxins in the water. Whereas when you're dry fasting, it's your own endogenous water, natural living water that you have inside yourself. It's so much easier for your body to deal with it. So it's just, opening up to a new perspective and questioning, are there other ways to satisfy that need for sugar? Are there other ways to satisfy that need for maybe salty foods that will allow me to start repairing my DNA and start coming back online to be the true human, rather than survive, to thrive?
Yeah, it's almost like going back to how we all are when we're first born, the purity.
Yes.
Purity. Back to the spirit world. Back to the spirit world. In the few minutes that we have left, I'm just going to go here and we can kind of lighten it up a little bit because you have gotten some pretty good accolades. I'm going to bring this up here because you've been called one of the top 10 women to look out for, and MSN did a good piece on you here as we see you in this article here. How do you feel getting these type of acknowledgments at this stage in your life and career?
It's lovely. What can I say? It is lovely. And, it also, it's an acknowledgement that I have dedicated myself, and I was blessed with fabulous parents. My mother was very interested in alternative things. That this love of learning, and rather than just being a seeker, searcher, always looking for more. I do believe there's always more, that there's always room to grow.
Yeah.
So it's nice to be acknowledged. And, it's also nice as we get older to feel that that wisdom is coming in and have the ability to sort of share. Because for me, it's all about helping other people become more of who they are, to go beyond the boundaries of who they believe themselves to be and literally open up to new possibilities.
Yes, new possibilities. And we go here. Here's another right here. It says Brains 500 Global official honoree to you, Dr. Carol Talbot. And this is just from last year. So you were honored with this as well. And I think
Thank
this is
you.
great right here. Um, Folks, she's the real deal. That's all I can say. She's trained with the YPO, the Young Presidents Organization. I mean, that's big time stuff.
Oh,
So
they're great people. They're really great people. They always
yes,
treat me so well when I run events for them. They're lovely.
yes, the YPO, Young Presidents Organization, and others that you've taught and lectured with. Dr. Carol, I want to thank you so much. How can the people find you? I know we didn't even get to the Possibility Hub, but how can we find you or get in contact with you or find all of your services, the multitude of services that you have?
Okay, so thepossibilityhub.com is one of my websites. Actually going through a little bit of a revamp at the moment. You can find me on Instagram, Carol K. Talbot, on Facebook, LinkedIn, Dr. Carol, and of course, my latest book, Reimagine You, Bioregenesis of the DNA Blueprint Through Source Feeding. It's available on all online book platforms, available in paperback and Kindle. And yeah, I love to connect with people. If your listeners and viewers have more questions, love to share more. And thank you so much. I've so enjoyed our conversation. And as I said before, it's been very, very nourishing. And I hope it's been nourishing for your viewers as well.
Absolutely. And the last thing I'm going to bring up right here, I'm just going to bring this up real quick, just to show the viewers. This is Dr. Carol right here, showing the brilliancy and the flexibility and how we as human beings are capable of literally doing anything at any time of our lives if we put our brains and minds and hearts to it. So what are we seeing here? It says spinning at aerial. So this is a aerial exercise.
Yes,
Is that
it's
correct?
not aerial yoga, it's aerial performing arts. And it
Aerial
is,
performing arts. Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
it's like, I feel as if I'm in Cirque du Soleil. So it's
Yeah.
challenging mentally, it's challenging emotionally. You think, oh, am I going to fall? It's
Right.
challenging physically as well. You end up covered in bruises and you just don't care.
Yeah.
I am the oldest at that studio by a long shot.
Yeah.
But they are so lovely to me, so
Yeah.
lovely. And, I used to be a semi-professional dancer, Kenan,
Okay.
back in the day, and I've taught yoga and fitness and things like that. So this satisfies me and nourishes me in so many different ways because when you see the routine and what they're doing, you go, what the heck? I'll never end up doing that. But, I go regularly to this and I've become a little bit addicted, and it takes a lot of strength. One of the things I
I
was
can tell.
told by friends was they said, oh, you'll never build muscle if you're not taking protein. Well, you can probably see through my dress, I've got quite a nice muscle there, but
Oh
you
yeah.
need a lot of strength to pull yourself up into that hoop. So just love it. What can I say? Absolutely
Wow.
adore it.
Dr. Carol. Yes, I love it. Love it. Love it. Dr. Carol, thank you so much for coming on the Kinetic Hour. It's greatly appreciated. Come back because
I would
there's
love
so
to come
many
back.
other questions that I want to ask you specifically about the brain and just the mind, and we can go into the chakra system and anything else that comes up. I got so many other questions that just kind of I just want to pick your brain, you know. Um, so come back to the Kinetic Hour if you may.
I
Um,
would love to. Thank you very much. And I've loved your questions. I've loved the conversation. And yes, like you, I think we have many, many other areas that we could speak about. And you also hold so much wisdom, knowledge, and insights. And you've also reminded me to go out and order another batch of colored
the
glasses
glasses, yeah.
to wear. Yeah, I haven't had them for a couple of years. I don't know where they disappeared to. I'm going to
Yeah.
order them.
There you go. See, we all learn something from each other every day. So it's a great thing. So Dr. Carol, thank you so much for taking the time out. I know it's a great time difference, so thank you for staying up late to
Well,
come on the
that's
Kinetic
also
Hour.
one of the benefits of source feeding is that you don't need so much sleep
Yeah, that's true.
and creativity. It's one of the benefits, so it's not a problem.
Absolutely. So thank you so much. Can you stick around just for a couple of minutes after we go off the air? Um,
Totally.
so to everyone listening and watching, once again, go to my YouTube channel, The Kinetic Hour, KENNETIC. Tell everyone that you know to tune in to The Kinetic Hour. It's greatly appreciated. There's 1,000 podcasts that you can listen to. So thank you for choosing to tune in to the Kinetic Hour. And thank you to Dr. Carol. And until next time.